Once upon a time in the great city of Baghdad, there lived a weak and poor woodcutter named Hindbad. One day, Hindbad was carrying a bundle of wood on his back. He happened to pass by the beautiful mansion of Sinbad the Sailor. Exhausted from his labor, he set his load down to rest. At that time, Sinbad was entertaining some friends and enjoying light conversation. Hindbad was struck with envy at the sight of such wealth. He asked a passerby, "Brother, who lives in this mansion?" The passerby replied, "You live in Baghdad and don't know Sinbad the Sailor?" The man went on his way, but Hindbad looked up at the sky and muttered, "Oh Lord, there's hardly any difference between the names Hindbad and Sinbad, yet how rich he is and how poor I am." Coincidentally, Sinbad heard these words. He gestured to a servant to bring the old man in. The servant came to Hindbad and said, "My master is calling you." Hindbad was surprised. Why would a rich man want anything with a poor man like him? Still, he went inside with the servant. Sinbad respectfully welcomed the woodcutter and asked, "What were you saying outside?" Frightened, the old man replied, "My lord, I was exhausted from carrying the load. I just said something without thinking." Sinbad said, "Do not be afraid. I heard your words and they deeply affected my heart." He continued, "But don't think I received all this wealth for free. I've endured great hardships for it. Let me tell you my story." Then he ordered a servant to offer food to Hindbad. Addressing all the guests present, Sinbad began his tale. "My father was a great merchant. In addition to cash, he owned a lot of property. When he passed away, I inherited everything. Being young, I got caught up in luxury and spent recklessly until my fortune began to dwindle. That's when I realized my mistake. I sold whatever property was left, gathered the money, consulted with some fellow merchants, and bought goods for trade. In the name of God, I set off toward India. Our ship docked at several ports. I sold the goods I had brought and purchased new items, steadily earning a decent profit. One day, our ship anchored near a small island, and we all went ashore for some sightseeing. Being fond of exploration, I wandered farther than the others. Suddenly, the ground gave a tremor like an earthquake. At that moment, the captain shouted, "Run! Hurry! This isn't an island!" Actually, this was not a real island. It was a massive whale that had been sleeping for decades, with an entire island of trees and vegetation growing on its back. Upon hearing this, those who were near the ship ran and managed to board. But since I had gone too far, I couldn't make it back in time. The fish dived into the water. Whole island started to sink, and I was left floating on the surface. No matter how much I struggled, the waves carried me far away. I was floating for days in ocean. Eventually, tossed and tumbled by the sea, I was thrown onto the shore of another island. I was laying there, and after some time, some guards came to me. It turned out that they were servants of the king of the island, who ruled over a prosperous land. The guards escorted me to their king. The island was vast and bustling, filled with people, vibrant markets, and countless houses stretching as far as the eye could see. The king was kind and wise. He listened with great interest and said, "You are welcome here as our guest. You have shown great endurance." He then appointed me as an officer in his court and gave me a fine house to live in. Over time, I became well known for my honesty and knowledge of trade. I earned the king's trust, and he entrusted me with important tasks. But though I was comfortable, my heart yearned for my homeland, for Baghdad. One day, news reached the court that a merchant ship had arrived at the harbor. I hurried there and asked the captain where he came from. Imagine my surprise when I learned it was the same ship from which I had fallen. The captain did not recognize me, but I approached him and said, "Do you have any goods belonging to a man named Sinbad?" "Alas," the captain said, "that man was lost at sea, but I have kept his goods safe and am selling them in his name so that I may return the profits to his family in Baghdad." I smiled and said, "Captain, I am that Sinbad." He looked at me closely and, after much astonishment, embraced me with joy. I proved my identity by describing the cargo and the voyage. The captain returned all my goods and profits. I presented gifts to the generous king and took his leave. Then I boarded the ship and, by God's grace, returned safely to Baghdad. With the wealth I had earned, I rebuilt my life and helped many others. And so, Hindbad, Sinbad said, turning to the woodcutter, that is the story of how I earned my riches, not by chance, but through peril, patience, and providence. The guests clapped with admiration. Hindbad sat in silence, humbled and awed. Sinbad gave small bag of coin to Hindbad and said, "You are welcome to return tomorrow, and I will tell you of my second voyage, for it was even stranger than the first." And so Hindbad returned the next day, and the adventures continued.